would like to express our warm thanks to the organizers for this invitation to participate in this interesting and so fruitful conference. Professor Grammatas didn't manage to be here due to a commitment that had been taken, but he sent me greetings and warm thanks. If by performance I mean the practice of remembrance, since it is there that the playwrights and the actor's memory, as well as the spectators and social memory, created meet, then theatre can recall the art of memory, reflection and repetitive appearance of the past and the present, and therefore the time and presence or the timeless past through which culture and memory is inflamed inside the individual memory as a subjective creation of the viewer and ecology preference. Subsequently, theatre becomes a privileged field of repetition, memory, and mnemonic reconstruction of the texts and their performed visualization, a timely cultural phenomenon comprising and deriving meaning from the individual memory of the viewer as well as the collective memory of the audience with which it exists in a constant dialogue. According to the above, theatrical performance is a unique experience happening just once, limited in time and statistically interiorizing between an elusive current assessment and a constantly decreasing mnemonic recording, which makes the expression of any judgment on the part of the viewing subject rather relative and precarious. This is because during the performance, in front of the viewer, a stage reality takes place which is naturally possible to be perceived and decoded identically by all those present, due to the various subjective and objective, measurable and immeasurable factors, one of which, memory, with its different forms and dimensions, is a very important one. The ceaseless change and evolution of pictures and symbols, which come out on stage as holistic theatrical speech, result in emerging feelings and stimulate the viewer's consciousness, thus finally being recorded as memory. In its own turn, it becomes a starting point and a prerequisite for even more mnemonic processes, which, when stratigraphically active, project the past of the story in the present of the theatrical expression, performance. According to this procedure of recording and memorizing, problematic is as well any effort to later reflect upon the memories caused by a particular performance in the viewer's consciousness, every time he's trying to recall the impressions of a spectacle he attended in the past in a critical and distanced manner. It can thus be concluded that the perception of the viewer in the audience of one particular performance or in general constitutes but the sum of different, possibly, but similar ingredients, which as a whole derive, directly or indirectly, from the concept of memory. How does memory work? What is the relationship between the memory and the actual occurrence itself? What remains on the viewer's memory after the performance? Is it some of words and phrases with particular conceptual gravity and vital content, or some facial expressions, actors' movements and gestures, or the elements of the visual settings, or finally some occurrences irrelevant to the aesthetic result connected to the place and time of the performance? These various questions have been discussed in an earlier study. Here we aim to explore, with the same starting point and similar questions in mind, modern Greek drama and its relationship to classical tragedy, mostly in the ways in which mythic time appears as a memory, an echo, or a recalling in modern dramatic revisions or adaptations of ancient myths, especially through tragic heroines such as Clytemnestra, Andromache, and Medea. Moreover, we focus on how mythic and dramatic time are projected onto the audience's consciousness, while the spectators are watching the performance in a closed or open theatrical space, and recall classical performances that have already seen, opening up new interpretative possibilities for the perception of ancient myth and drama. As Margaret Carson comments on the haunted stage, drama has always been centrally concerned with the retelling of stories already known to its public. For contemporary drama, this comment is much more true, considering that most playwrights of postmodern drama have dealt with adaptation, revision, transcription, or retelling of Greek tragic myths in their plays. In modern Greek theatre of the last decades, retelling of the already known myths, drawing on the rich sources of Greek tragedy, or suggesting different interpretations of myth and interpretations of mythic stories, seem to be a familiar element of the theatrical language of modern Greek dramatists. Playwrights use the canvas of the classical plays in a way that allows them to revise its elements, aiming to express their own conscience in an already known context. Thus, they sometimes focus on specific dramatic characters, and they re-examine their motivation, or they choose some elements of the play, of the well-known tragedy, which they expand and illuminate, while reducing or completely eliminating other aspects. Or they sometimes transpose the story to another time or place, creating clear analogies between contemporary heroes and the known and familiar to the audience tragic persons. Already in the 70s, the collection Four Dimensions by Eumenides, and in particular the dramatic monologues of this collection, made the first steps toward a different approach to the dramatic use of ancient myths. Deconstruction or rewriting of the traditional myth, which is being exploited by means of modern theatrical writing, later dominated the Greek theatre of the late 20th or the early 21st century. One of the ways in which myth is being revised in modern plays is the exploitation of memory, which undertakes a special function, giving multiple levels of significance in myth retold by the younger dramatists. This fact is based predominantly on the ability of the viewers to initially record and later recall the elements of the theatrical performance which have already seen, or a drama already read, through their mnemonic recording. This happens because memory, as a complex function of the human brain, has many unexplored properties. From this point of view, the study of memory is related to psychology, neurophysiology, biology, medicine, as well as sociology, history, and cultural studies. Types of theatrical memory in particular, the neurophysiological or intellectual memory, the emotional memory, physical memory, and the collective or social memory, function together so that the performance is being recorded in a multidimensional way in the consciousness, imminently unconscious of the viewer, and its data are recalled whenever the conditions are appropriate. In theatre in general, the subject matter of the play, the values and the messages derived from it, the relationships and the circumstances experienced by the heroes, the characters presented, all influence the viewer's consciousness and catalytically affect their memory, intensifying or weakening the oblivion brought about by time distance from the dramatic oceanic space and time of the characters on the one hand and the objective time on the other. The most interesting involvement of memory appears in the case of classical texts because they are the most lasting repository of people's cultural memories. As heroes and characters such as Oedipus, Antigone, Clytemnestra, Electra, Medea, given the intensity of the circumstances they experience and the broad properties they express, are difficult to forget and be swept away by the various relevant impressions the viewer totally acquires from his rich theatrical experience. In addition, the visualized symbols and the objects inscribed in the text structures, the descriptions and the instructions for place and time, as expressed by the playwright's stage direction, acquire special significance for the function of memory, being exceptionally visualized symbols, circumstances, and concepts, inseparably connected to the fable, to the play where they appear, and to the way they do so. Tragic heroines of contemporary plays converse with their earlier intertextual persona and run the certainties of the audience, overturning the consciousness complacency and causing mnemonic recall of elements inscribed in the dramatic text, which characterize them and at the same time refresh their image, adding new perspectives that affect the perception of drama. In the play of Dimaki-Zora, Andromache, or the Portopia Nicosia-Cyprus, Andromache, or Landscape of Woman in the Height of Night, the well-known Homeric heroine, whose fate is tied to the dramatic space of destroyed Troy, as it is depicted in the Iliad and the Trojan women in Eumenides, is now transposed to Epirus, in an artificial Trojan landscape imitation of Troy, as the author comments in the brief narration of the myth which precedes the text. Hector's wife, former princess, is now found as a slave, away from Troy, which, however, recreates with her own hands in the new landscape in which she was brought to live, somewhere in Epirus. The building materials for this utopia are the materials of memory, and a foreign language, foreign for her, the Greek, makes her able to find new names of things and to approach life again. Her memory lures her in a path between happy then and there, and an unbearable here and now, while she is trying with her words and her painting designs to understand and conquer this present, filling it with the stuff of her memory. The members of the audience on the other side are transferred through the heroine's memory to the past, which is known and retractable in their memory through the intertextual journey of a traumatic character from Homer to the present days. The image creates visualized symbols for the audience through the shared space described as three large painted surfaces representing the past state of public and private buildings of Troy, creating the illusion of the room sea. This space is constructed simply by using the memories of the heroine, but simultaneously creates a shared space that makes it easy for the audience to record it in its own memory. Another representative sample of mnemonic recording can be found in our Sidiropoulos play The Tears of Clytemnestra, Tradácteas Clytemnestras. Here, the dramatic figure of Clytemnestra seems to struggle constantly with her memory, which is present in every part of the monologue, as a driving force behind every thought, every judgment, and every emotion. In an intertextual dialogue with Iakovos Kambanelli's letter to Orestes, Clytemnestra is dominated by her grief for the loss of her beloved Phigenia, and reconstructs the past in the shadow of memories. Agamemnon comes again and again in her mind and speech, as a husband, a lover, and the murderer of her daughter, taking up strong emotions such as love, affection, and hatred in an endless path which Clytemnestra has to follow through her memories and the mandatory presence of the past. By exploiting post-traumatic and monologue, the tragic heroine inaugurates a dialogue with her own dramatic persona, from Aeschylus and Eumenides to Nicosia and Campanellis, as well as with other tragic figures such as Iphigenia, Electra, and even Medea, highlighting the power of memory in its diabolical dimension, which is anyway its essence. Moreover, in this way, another quality of memory is explored, which is directly related to the spectator, who properly possesses in his mnemonic baggage a whole information and theatrical experience that includes the image and the speech of these heroes from other performances of Greek tragedies or modern performances, or even films based on improvising. Clytemnestra, in this monologue, counts through time, through the memory of viewers, and eventually rises above and beyond entrenched images, combining elements from all of them, but refusing to be entrapped in one of them. Is she a mother in pain for the loss of her daughter? Is she a betrayed woman who passes for revenge? Is she a faithless wife? Is she a regretful assassin? Or all of these at the same time? As presenting herself at the beginning of the monologue, she expresses her emotions primarily as a mother who suffers for her lost daughter. I had once, Iphigenia, a part of her personality which recalls memories of the dramatic figure of Cambanelli's letter to Orestes. But later she presents herself as a woman bent on revenge, aspect already known from the Orestes of Aeschylus. From this aspect, she brings back memories of Clytemnestra of Agamemnon, who is characterized as androgynos gynea, because of her decisive and strong character, which is inappropriate for a woman. This aspect of a strong and proud queen is emphasized when the heroine of The Tears of Clytemnestra says, "My husband is back, I am a woman again." Beyond this mnemonic function of the textual elements, stage instructions play a more important role as indicators of communication between present and past, and mechanisms of access and understanding what has irrevocably happened, but mimetically reoccurring via its stage formation. Because the theatrical performance is an indirect system of visualizing the past, a dimension of reviving what once secured and its mnemonic recording, the focus being the viewer. During the performance, playwright's speech inscribed in the text, consciously or not, at times as a memory and at other times as oblivion, causes redemption of the conscience, sometimes suppressing and other times informing, while other times silencing and hiding things from the past, in a way that a renegotiation takes place, or even a resignification of the circumstances and experiences referred to in it. Playwrights with a different voice and means, everyone from their own point of view, aesthetics and ideology, submit their own proposals for an approach and renegotiation of the past by the present, through the development of particular way of managing the collective memory created for each. The cases of plays whose subject matter or heroes have been used by different playwrights with different aesthetics and at different times are really representative, as the creators of one historic period attempt to intervene creatively in the memory of the past, adjusting it or describing it according to their own expectations. Indicated as the play of Italy, roast beef, the hesitation of Clytemnestra before the murder, roast beef, questa mostra di Clytemnestra forma, where Clytemnestra, Iphigenia, Aegisthus, and Agamemnon are transposed to a very different dramatic time and space, and the mythical towns of Argos, in a pension for the elderly, where the stage directions which refer to the context are indicated. A surgery table. Everything is white. Surgery table with surgical tools, scissors, and knives well sharpened. On the operating table, a simple crystal vase with red bushy roses. The blood is present in every way through its presence, red color, and its absence, the white color of the pale face of Iphigenia and her light-colored dress, while Clytemnestra allows to sharpen the knives and to cut the roast beef in thin slices. Iphigenia, the young daughter, seems constantly whispering, "My mother, for my sake, sharpens knives," recalling the sacrifice of the tragic heroine and the revenge taken by her mother. Another element of the secondary text, the title and the subtitle, are meaningful. When the time of murder comes again, this modern heroine of the post-feminist era hesitates to kill her husband and prefers to live with him passionately. With this transposition of time and space, the Theodoros moves the story to another time and place, in the passion for the elderly present time, but without losing its core, while at the end an essential change happens. The ethical values radically change as Clytemnestra obeys new rules within the new social and cultural conditions of our era. It can be well claimed that this is true from the receiver's perspective of the auditorium themselves, since the final picture remains in memory and the opinion to be formed about a certain performance is composed of the individual and collective expectation and stereotypes in a certain society and era, in combination with the playwright's vision and the type of play, the aesthetics and ideology it expresses through the stage formulation of the drama, the contextually described by the writer of Memory of Time in relation to the trauma experiences, the expectations and the interests of the viewer as a person and as a member of social groups, revives and returns to the forefront in new versions. In Anna Maria Margarita's play, with the title Backstage by Schilio, 3 female actors in a small English town in the modern day reside in the same apartment and blame one another for the conditions of their lives. The bond that ties the play with the myth of the treatise is the post-dramatic element. The female characters of the play are 3 actresses who take part in the performance of Electra. 2 of them, Cynthia and Evelyn, mother and daughter, impersonate Clytemnestra and Electra in the performance. Thus, it is revealed that their relationship is essentially analogous to the relations of tragic heroines who impersonate, while the third figure, Martha, from Ukraine, has left her father's home, following a stranger called Jason, and when she finds out that he abandoned her, lives with her children and later murders them. In this way, Clytemnestra, Electra, and Medea transfer their tragic fate to this modern team of 3 actresses. This transposition of the mythic elements into contemporary highlights the analogy between the tragic heroines and the dramatic figures of the modern play, and allows spectators to proceed to the recognition of the well-known characters, and to use their mnemonic recordings as interpretative keys to the perception of the play. In addition, the mnemonic connection between the contemporary play and the ancient drama is reinforced here by the sight of Cynthia's nun that evokes memories of a murder. As we can see from this only indicated reference to modern plays that revives ancient myths, most playwrights or directors often make use of familiar historic and mythological themes and elements, as well as they employ techniques of dramaturgy and direction that will help them manipulate in the best possible way the distance between stage and auditorium. This is why they reclaim stereotypes and elements commonly accepted by the entire audience, so that their work becomes more intelligible and accessible for the audience, thus more easily recalled to memory. They are based on the concept of collective or cultural memory, which is mostly a result of social procedures. Focusing on that kind of memory, we can mention that what the viewer remembers or may remember does not only originate in their personal, but to a great extent their collective cultural experience. The individual memory of those belonging to this culture, readers, audience, relies upon and is determined to a great extent by the collective, since the subject remembers what they already know, what is more familiar and accessible. Such a memory function can be identified with the play Medea de Profundis by Maria Kiriaki. In the preface of this work, the author states, Medea is registered in our collective memory as a mysterious, magical being and unexplained creature, and continues exploring the ancient myth of Medea and its various versions, focusing on the Euripidean form of the tragic heroine, which is the most accessible and retractable in the memory of viewers. A similar further version of the myth presented by Vasilis Bundoulis in his play Diablo Medea, whose title is indicative of the playwright's intention to present a tragic Medea with characteristics that differ from those the collective memory has included in the stereotypical image of her. These mnemonic recording and creative revisions of the well-known myths by modern writers feeds back and enriches the collective memory of the viewers. The historical, social, and political conditions of life, the experience of the modern viewer, the current attitudes decisively affect the way in which they perceive these new forms. Present conditions shape the collective memory of the spectator who decodes this new theatrical language with the elements provided by the conditions of his life. With this meaning, we can suggest that the retelling, revision, and transcription of the known tragic myths in modern plays is one of the most significant and interesting tendencies observed, directly linked to the various functions of memory, which, in this way, becomes a key factor in the formulation of the audience's opinion of a play, of an actor,